You'll see I'm holding a microphone. It's not necessarily to make me any louder because I'm pretty loud anyway. It's just this is being live streamed, so it's on YouTube. There's some people that couldn't make it here today, so it's just so people can watch it from home. And without the microphone, they'll see me talking and moving my hands a lot, but there'll be no audio. So in case you think it's a bit unnecessary, a bit of overkill, there is method to our madness. So thank you all very much for coming today. We really appreciate everybody being here. I'm sure most of you know, but maybe not everyone, this is the launch of the community-led mobility strategy for Tramore. It's been done as part of the Conundrum project. And if for anyone that didn't get a copy of the strategy, there are still some at the back. If they're gone, just let us know. Zikang at the end, my colleague will be down at the back at the end of the talks, and he'll take details from everybody to post them out to you afterwards if needed, okay? But if you didn't get the paper one, you can also just scan the QR code. Do we have the clicker? Yeah, if you scan the QR code, it'll bring you to the online version, okay? It'll bring it up on your phone, and you're able to share that, so that's publicly available to anybody. So yeah, so welcome everybody. Thank you again for coming. This, as I said, is from the Conundrum project. So the Conundrum project is funded by Research Ireland. The funding actually comes from the EU as part of the post-COVID recovery and resilience funding. We're funded under the National Sustainable Communities National Challenge is the name of the funding. So Research Ireland have these different competition-based funding where they fund a group of projects based around a common theme. And then there's different phases, and depending on how the project does, you might get to be a finalist. You know, you advance through different stages of funding. So it's competition-based. The challenge that we're in particular is called sustainable communities. Okay, so all of the projects in our category, we're all trying to figure out ways that we can work with communities to build more sustainable, and in our case, more inclusive and accessible futures as well. Okay, so it's not just about environmental sustainability, but also about social and economic as well. So that's kind of the broader context, but our project specifically is looking at small to medium Irish towns and trying to look at how it is we can improve mobility. We're starting from a place where there's 2 or 3 key things that we think are really important. The first one is the need for place-based knowledge, okay? And basically what that just means is that we believe that in Irish towns, there is the knowledge there, there's the expertise from people who live in the town to help address the challenges and help improve mobility for everybody, okay? So people who live in the town have first-hand experience of what's not working or what could happen to make it better, okay? So that's the first sort of point that we're coming from. The second point, as I said, is about the idea that it's not just about environmental sustainability, but also the people aspect of that too. So they're the kind of guiding principles of it. The challenge funding, the way that it works is we first got funded for 6 months in part of this challenge to develop an idea that we thought might work. Following that, all 12 projects in our group, we all progressed to stage 2, and that was where we got to do a pilot study. So it was like, okay, you have an idea, now you need to go test it out somewhere. So we did our first study in Enniscorthy in County Wexford. Following that, we progressed then from the 12 projects. We're now one of 5 finalist projects. We're in stage 3 of the funding. And that's I guess the purpose of that, this current phase, is to, you know, in the language of the funders, to scale, okay? So to scale it out, to show that actually what we did in that one town, that actually doing the same thing in other towns, that it can have impact, okay? So it's not just Enniscorthy that's benefiting from it, but actually we're developing a process that potentially could be done all over Ireland in 30 or more similar sized towns, and it could help communities to have more sustainable mobility futures. So this current phase, we've been, as I said, scaling and replicating. We did it in 2 towns. So one was Youghal in County Cork. We launched that strategy in November, just gone. And the second town that we're replicating in this phase is Tramore, obviously. So I know many of you have been involved in the different activities and workshops we've done so far. And special thanks to Vinny and the Tramore Development Trust for actually inviting us in, whereas we chose Enniscorthy and then chose Youghal. It was actually people from the town here that actually invited us in to try and to do this work here. So we're very grateful for that invite. The strategy you have in front of you, or you might have on your phones, this is the outcome of 7 months of work that Connor was leading and Kieran, our colleague Kieran, that they were leading here in the town, and that a few of the rest of us we were supporting in the background or doing other things. But it's the outcome of that. Nearly everything in this strategy up until pretty much the actions, which is the last 2 pages, is just us saying what people in the town have told us. So whether that is community groups and residents, whether it's local businesses, whether it's the bus providers, whether it is the local authority, whether it's the Southern Regional Assembly. So all of the relevant stakeholders that have been really helpful in participating in this. This strategy is basically building from that data set, okay? So it's building an evidence base. To support it as well, we've also published online on our website the full list of challenges and opportunities, okay? So you'll see mention in here, and Connor's going to talk about them in a bit more detail, but we talk about the number of challenges and how they're diverse, how they're different. If you look on our website, you'll actually see the full list of challenges and opportunities there and the places that people identified with them, okay? So that's another important tool that we from this process. Ultimately, with this strategy, it's a tool. It's not just us doing a quick recap of, okay, here's what everybody said. At the end of it, we suggest 9 action points, so on 2 of the last pages, that basically building from what we've learned in the town, from all of the people that participated, our team got together and said, okay, well actually how, building from all of what everybody's told us, how can we actually take this and suggest actions that might help improve mobility, sustainable mobility in Tramore. So they're quite diverse. Some of them are bigger level. Again, Connor, and some are smaller. Connor will talk more about these, I'm sure, in his presentation in a minute. But you'll see that they're really very diverse. But what's important is that this tool, we've now done, we've done this work, we've gathered all of this information, we've created this tool and the other lists, which are also tools. We did this for 2 key reasons. So one is to empower local voices, okay? So it's about actually giving space for people with lived experience to have their experiences taken seriously, okay? And this is something that local authority tried to do, and we have public consultations, but this was us thinking about it in a different way. How can we do it in a different way than how public consultation currently happens? So that's the first goal of creating this tool, was to give a platform for those voices. The second one is to build from this database and to have the tool with suggested actions that's written in the language of planners to help local community groups, local people who want to drive change locally, to basically equip them with the tools that are needed for them to then engage in conversations with planners, with local authorities, to try and empower and drive change on a local level. What's really key is this is your strategy. It's the strategy of people in Tramore, of Waterford County Council, of Southern Region Assembly, of everybody who's participated. And what I mean by that is that it's not just reflecting the stories that you've told us, your experiences, but it's also now, it's handed over to you now. This is, you can do with this what you wish. This is a tool you can use in your own local advocacy to get change in the area you live. Some people said about local footpaths, footpaths around where they live, or lack of bus access. This is something you can use in your own advocacy for that, but it's also a tool, as we said, for planners and local authorities to better direct their resources. We all wish that local authority had endless money, that they could just wave a magic wand and fix everything at once, but we know that that's not the case. So in doing this type of local work, the type of stories that people from the town have shared, it helps local authority to figure out where exactly they need to look at to address some of these challenges. So without talking about that for much more, I'm going to hand over. First, I'll hand over to my colleague Connor, who's going to talk through some of the key findings from the strategy. Again, we don't want to hold people up. We're conscious people want to get home, get their dinner. So that'll be the biggest part of our presentation today, where Connor's going to talk about the strategy itself, but there is more details in the strategy for you to look at later. And then Brian is going to lead a panel discussion with a few people who participated in the project up until now. And they're going to just sort of speak about why they think that this sort of work is important for the things that they're trying to achieve. Then I'll just do a very quick recap at the end. For anyone who's just come in, please grab a tea, coffee, strategies at the back. Come have a sit down up here, don't worry. Without any further ado, I'll hand over to Connor. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Dean. Hi everyone, my name's Connor. I'm from Dublin and very proud to be from Dublin, but we were down here and it was kind of one of these sort of days, Exquilt and Nagluca, and it was just absolutely beautiful. So fantastic to be down in Tramore again. We've got to come down a number of times since, enjoyed lunch out on the main street and that, so really enjoyed our time down in Tramore over the last couple of months. The other thing that was really important over that time, of course, was, as Dean said, being welcomed into the town is very different than trying to get set up from scratch. So huge shout out to the Development Trust and everybody, all the groups who welcomed us in and made it work, coming together and making it work. So that really did make a big difference to the project as a whole. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process specifically here in Tramore. I think you've got a little bit of an overview there from Dean, but before we get to the solutions, it's important to understand how we actually got there, and the sort of conundrum process that we've gone through. And most of the face that I can see have been to at least one event, and some of you have been to 3, if not 4. So you're probably familiar with some of this already, but we'll go through it step by step. So as Dean said, the conundrum process is all about creating this new dialogue and a place-based approach. If anybody's familiar at all with the public consultation process or any sort of new development, there's frustration from the public because people feel like they're talking into the void and they're not being heard. But there's frustration from the other side as well because there's lots of statutory requirements in terms of time. There's within 2 weeks you have to get responses in. It's an awful lot of work to go through. Mostly it's dealing with complaints. So it's not a very healthy or positive way of engaging with people on any topic, no matter what side of the particular topic you might be on. So we were really looking at how we could go about engaging people a little bit more effectively in novel ways as well. And I'll talk about some of those tools in a minute. But as we mentioned, the idea is that the approach is place-based, really looking at the local approach. Maybe sometimes policies are developed in the Dáil in Dublin, and you can't really cookie cutter them down to a very local town. You need the local lived experience to actually tweak it so that it works for the local town. Giving local communities a voice. A lot of the time, the consultation process, the people who maybe need help the most or should be heard don't know how to access particular systems or get in touch with the right people, or they're not engaged properly. So it's important that we look at ways of engaging those people in particular, and then looking at the challenges and finding solutions that actually match challenges rather than solutions sometimes for solutions' sake. And that's where we link everything from co-creation down to delivery and impact. So as we said, we've gone through this process of identifying all these challenges with these different groups, but then sometimes people know the challenge, but they don't necessarily know the ideal solution, so we try and put those two together through this process. As Dean mentioned, we've spoken to a lot of different groups, but primarily they're divided into these 3. So Waterford City and County Council, but also national stakeholders as well. So TII is Transport Infrastructure Ireland, the NTA is the National Transport Agency, and a number of academics, so about 20 academics, Department of Transport staff, about 20 of those as well. All the different residents groups, so many of you would have dealt with my colleague Kieran through the community workshops that he was leading on, and then the businesses and transport providers as well. So we did the workshops and the interviews with a number of those, but you can see the basic breakdown there to give a total of 97 people engaged over the few months of the project, which is a high level of engagement for a town of this size. On this slide, you can see the 3 phases of the conundrum approach that we went through. So you've probably engaged with us on one of these 3 stages already. In the first instance, we did a lot of mapping and background work on the town. So this is looking at things like the CSO data, the statistics, the census, looking at deprivation indices, car usage, bus usage, public transport engagement, that kind of thing, and getting a lay of the land, where the population is, car ownership in and around the town, and what that is doing in terms of pinch points around the town. So we built that up, and from that developed our stakeholder mapping list. So going back to those 3 different types of people we were trying to reach out to, we analysed which groups we should sort of go for first, and then from them grow our web of people that we were speaking with. On top of that, then we had we had the scoping focus groups, which was really to get the broad strokes issues for the town. And then we went to the second phase of listening, and that was really where we had, I think, 4 different workshops, really looking at what are the minutiae of critical issues that people are experiencing in their day-to-day. Where is it that the curb doesn't have a dishing that you can cross the road? Where is the zebra crossing needed that you can't cross the road? Or where does the path just disappear where obviously it should continue? These kind of issues that people have that are only gained through that lived experience of having lived in the town, and you can't get from sitting at a computer at home. That was the critical piece of the listening phase. We went through a number of iterations of this, mapping on our physical maps where these issues were, and then layering that with our data piece as well. Finally then, in the testing phase, we took all of that information where we had our challenges on one side, our solutions on the other, bringing them all together in terms of what would work well for the town in terms of solutions that address the challenges raised. And that really was our long list of solutions that we put forward. We did another workshop, we came back down, did another workshop with where we analysed those with the people in our workshops to identify a short list of actions, and that's how we came to our final list. So really it was a step-by-step with the community the entire way. So really it's not like we were taking problems and identifying large-scale solutions. The solutions and the challenges were put forward by the town. One of the other tools we developed over this phase of the project was this Towns Matter platform. Again, this is about reaching people who don't necessarily engage with the consultation process as it is, or public processes, or local government, for example. So this is a relatively easy to use platform where you can go online and just drop a pin anywhere in the town, take a picture on your phone, upload it like you would share a WhatsApp message, for example, and just have that comment about the town, be it a more grey issue area or a light green sort of solution or opportunity for the town, and putting those around. So over our 3 towns, you can go on that's the link, townsmatter.ie. You can see Enniscorthy, Youghal or Tramore, and where the key areas are for the town. This is in particular, I think, really useful for young people who might look at kind of a public consultation and the different stages of a survey, and they're probably not really that bothered, to be honest. Whereas if this sort of a link was up on Instagram or on TikTok, they can just click in, go in, and upload a picture or a complaint or an opportunity. And it's a little bit more of a positive, quick way to get people to engage. And it's quite light touch. The key as well is being able to upvote things that you like, and then build up, and then we can get a picture of what are popular in terms of solutions for the town as well. So this is quite an innovative approach that we trialed out in Tramore. Looking at our challenges, our challenge areas and our solutions, we looked at 128 challenges identified by people in the town, and then these were specifically in 28 different locations. So we would always ask where exactly we're talking about. In some cases, people would talk more generally, well, the town is always jammers at summertime, or the school run time is chock-a-block, or something like that. Whereas in some instances, say, for example, the end of the Doneraile could be quite dark, or there could be a zebra crossing at the end of the Doneraile. That kind of level of specificity was the other end. So we tried to map those and get specific locations where we could. So of the 128, about a quarter of them or so we had the specific location for, which is very useful in terms of mapping where these areas are. As I said, some of those issues were hyper-local. So these are really specific to Tramore, and some of them were more general and almost could be applied almost anywhere in Ireland, for example, or town-wide. And then we divided them as we sort of did a thematic analysis where we take each of the challenges raised and basically break them down into their component parts. And then we're able to do this thematic analysis of identifying basically accessibility and safety, infrastructure deficits, and spatial planning and stakeholder engagement being the third one as the major group areas. This could be a little bit tricky to see, so I'll just go read them out. So under accessibility and safety, we have pedestrian safety, accessibility, and road safety. So those are 3 distinct areas. Pedestrian safety, obviously, number one thing is traffic through the town, and that came up by far the most raised by people in terms of their lived experience. But close behind that was accessibility, but the two are kind of linked. So a lot of places where the paths are quite narrow, double parking, cars going quite quickly, all of these feed into one another. And that then again is road safety as well. So the 3 are quite interlinked. On the infrastructure side, we have bus deficits, bus service deficits, active travel, taxi and train service, and private vehicle infrastructure. In the first instance, obviously the 360 bus, in some cases people were quite put off by having a big double-decker bus going through quite narrow streets. When they're walking, when they're in their car, they're quite intimidated by these larger buses. And do they need to be going down the small, narrow roads, or could they be more focused on the main roads, was something that came up again and again. Active travel. We talk about the urban form under the next issue. Obviously, it's a very steep town, but in terms of active travel itself, this is an issue that came up again and again, both for and against, to be honest. So active travel not having enough cycle lanes, not having enough walking and pavements, but also the issues it causes around traffic was raised a couple of times. The taxi and train service, in particular the nighttime economy. So either if you work in Waterford and are trying to come home at night, it's very difficult, or if you want to go out from Waterford to Tramore for a night out, it's very difficult to get a taxi or a bus, with those finishing a little bit earlier, and that was raised particularly by younger people. The private vehicle infrastructure, we're talking about charging infrastructure there, so in particular for electric vehicles, looking for proper chargers around town for people who want to go electric or even plug-in hybrid, for example. There's very limited infrastructure for that. On the spatial planning and stakeholder engagement, we were, I suppose, quite surprised to see the amount of people who raised this, because it's not something that comes up in the explicit way it did here, I think. So in the first instance, people asked for better public engagement, both the political side of things, the local government side of things, and the national side of things. So they really wanted a better understanding of what's going on, to be consulted more effectively, and to feel like they're engaged with the system a little bit more. And that was very clear. The spatial planning and governance, again, to have a more clear understanding of what the planning system is, how specific plans work, when they're likely to come up. That kind of thing was raised in various different ways by a wide number of people. And as I said already, the urban form was more the steepness of the steepness of the hills in layman's terms. So those were our key issues. On the back of that then we had opportunities or solutions identified. Now they weren't always linked to exactly, this is a problem with steep hills, let's put in an escalator, or let's put in electric bikes, or something like that. Often, you know, here's a solution over here, here's a different problem over here. So we were trying to put that puzzle together. That was our work in the background. But if, 87 opportunities raised is quite high when you think of the number of 128 challenges raised, 87 opportunities. It's quite a positive process, whereas the consultation process traditionally can be just, I don't like this, no, don't change anything. Having this as an option, giving people the chance to put forward their opportunities, made it a little bit more of a positive experience for everybody, both as a researcher, but also for the people engaged with the process as well. The opportunities then, we did that similar thematic analysis process and whittled that 87 down to 22, matching them and layering them onto the challenges raised. And then we went through that final workshop where we basically ranked those to get our final list, which the 9 in the booklet went through that process. And I'll just have the 9 here. So you can probably see those, but essentially enhancing safety for the residents. As I said, this is the #1 challenge by far raised in the town, and all around Ireland, councils are looking to reduce the town speeds down to 30 kilometres. So where things are 50, sometimes still 80 on surprising number of roads coming into town, certainly all of these would be reduced to 30 kilometres an hour in the middle of the urban area. Enhance the attractiveness of sustainability and active travel. Again, looking at things like having bus stops painted, having bus timetables clear, having buses run on time, having cycle lanes maintained where there's not leaves and things blocking them, and bikes having to swerve out into the road. All these little things that seem quite simple, but staying on top of them does take somebody actually sitting down and making it a job. Public lighting came up an awful lot. Again, the Donna Rail was raised down in Newtown. Various areas that maybe are away from the centre of town could be better lit was certainly something that came up again and again. The lower promenade, particularly in the form of maybe a summer streets type approach, to look at doing something like what was done on Main Street, down near the prom, making it that you could eat out and have a lot of more seating for cafes and that between the beach and the businesses at the far end. So just making it a more attractive place to do business and to visit and have that sort of lifestyle that you might think of going to France on holidays, for example. An interagency group to address town challenges holistically. What does that mean? So this basically means a group, volunteers, council staff, individual community groups could come together and kind of have a discussion around what's happening in the town. That could take many forms, and it's for the people who want to drive that to think of those different opportunities. In a lot of towns, they'd have business districts, for example, or town groups coming together for local businesses, but there are even tidy towns at a much lower level, for example, but somewhere in between those is the sweet spot in terms of developing active travel, and to look at a governance structure that really addresses challenges while facilitating collaboration is the key there. Finally then, a feasibility study for an integrated multi-transportation hub. So multi-transportation hub is essentially giving people more choice in terms of not having their private car all the time. These look like having an e-scooter, public e-scooter available, public electric bikes available, and connecting in with other infrastructure like cycle lanes, like a greenway, and maybe at the start of a greenway, for example, you'd have something like this to give people the chance to experience these new types of transport and or standard bikes as well. So just giving people a choice to get around the town. Looking at seasonal mobility measures. Again, this would look like over the summer when there is this major influx of people, looking at where those areas are, where there's a huge amount of cars that maybe they don't need to be there, looking at alternatives for where those cars could be left, and making the areas that people want to use a little bit more pedestrian focused, for example. So down at the prom or connecting up some of the main streets could look at a summer street sort of idea where you might pedestrianize them just for a couple of months, and then looking at the quieter times of the year like now, obviously you'd go back to normal. And that's something that's been trialled Europe-wide and in Ireland as well to great success. Support the development of a Tramore Waterford City Dungarvan Greenway. I think Paul might touch on this when he's talking on the panel, but this makes complete sense in terms of linking tourism into the town, and it's something that is already going on, but could be a great success. And as I said at the start, I think Waterford County Council have engaged with us, certainly through this process, a huge amount, but they have a number of these plans we've sort of found out through this process already in train. So it could be useful for other people to be aware of these plans so that they can link in with them as well. Utilise demand responsive transport, so addressing things like where the local link runs, how often it runs, when are big events coming up that we might need to change or tweak the routes, and just being a little bit more less rigid and be flexible to what the needs of the town are. So looking at where those gaps are and those last mile off the main routes, I suppose. And finally then, monitoring and assessing the impact of these interventions. So there's limited point in just all going off or individuals having their interest and just trying to do one or two of these things without looking at the big picture holistically. So it's really important that we look at where we are in terms of benchmark measurements and where we're trying to get to and having an oversight of that. So that's our sort of a critical point in terms of bringing all of this together as well. But those are our actions that have come out of your feedback. So it really is your actions, to be honest. And we just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's been so helpful throughout this entire process. Thank you very much. Cheers. So I'm going to hand over to Brian. If Francis, Paul, and Vinny would like to come up, we can get on to our next stage.
Okay, thanks very much, Connor. As Connor started off by saying where he's from, I'm from Waterford, and I'm very proud of that. And it's great to be here in Tramore. And to thank everybody that engaged in this process with us. So I'm based in Trinity College, and our colleagues are based in UCD. So we're coming to the end of this research project. We have the 3 towns that we've looked at. We're hoping that we'll go past that, and we will be able to engage more with the towns. But as Dean said, we handed over this document basically to the locals to use, to empower you, to see what can happen when you listen to other people. And it's very different to the kind of typical engineering approaches that we would have when it comes to planning for a town. Typically what would happen is a census is probably looked at, so that happens every, 5 years, providing there isn't a pandemic or foot and mouth. And it's just that piece of information that's used. Whereas we, in this, and one of the things about doing that, there's an awful lot of voices that are missed. Voices around people with disabilities, voices around, that are transient into the community, come in and out of the community. Kids, their voices aren't in that type of data. So that's what this process enables us to do. But what I'm going to do is talk to the panel and ask them. I suppose I'm going to do maybe 3 questions and looking at you guys to keep me on time, and then we're going to open it up to the floor for asking panel questions, asking the research team questions, and to have a discussion happen about the work that we've done. So the first question that I'd like to ask, and Vinny, I'm going to go to you first, is what in those 9 solutions, I suppose, one, is there something missing, and 2, which do you think might have the most impact?
Can I give a very quick context to where this came from, first of all? So this came from doing a place, it's called Place Standard. It's a Scottish tool that looks at place evaluation. So back in 2023, my role in relation to Healthy Ireland, we did a training program based in Tramore for Waterford for all different interested parties to undertake a Place Standard exercise, just to train people up to be able to do something like that. And after that, we decided, and I'm a member of Tramore Development Trust, it was a really, really good opportunity. We had a number of people from Tramore Development Trust trained up on how to do this exercise. So we did an online version of the Place Standard, which looks at a whole number of variables of how you feel about your place. We had 737 respondents, so that's fairly significant for the population of Tramore. But mobility and getting around and finding public transport opportunity was a significant challenge that was identified. For me, there's not one piece of the 9 opportunities I'd actually pick one over the other. I think the fact that it's framed in such opportunity is I think the real enabler here. This is an enabling document. Thanks very much, Brian, for agreeing to take Tramore on as the 3rd town in relation to this. You could have picked other towns. You had other towns on your radar. But I think this document can be used by, we have some elected members here. We have people from economic development in Waterford City and County Council. We have people here from the community section. They can use this document to actually access funding to deliver some of these opportunities. But it also gives a strong agenda for Tramore Development Trust to do that wider plan for Tramore, to look at the future of Tramore over the next 20 to 30 years. All the right words are in this document, as in sustainable future. It's important that whoever is going to take this doesn't have that narrow lens. So Waterford City and County Council could look at having a town team to look at chasing funding like they did for Main Street. But it's bigger than that, because we're talking about transport here, but you can see from the document there's so much more on this document than just looking at mobility. So I'm not picking one over another, so sorry.
That's okay, Vinny. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, there's an awful lot of stakeholders that are based here in Tramore. The incumbent CEO of CIE is based in the town, and you can always leverage him to fix some of the issues that are there. Francis, are you ready for me to come to you?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So the same question is there something missing, or is there something that that stands out to you?
Again, I'm not overly familiar with all this. I'm a member of staff in Arts Conundrum, and in the end of 2023, there was an active travel campaign set up to just get the students to walk. There's an awful lot of traffic that enters the school premises, so this was just to reduce get the kids out walking, reduce the cars coming on site, and trying to reduce the traffic around the area. And if you're not familiar with Tramore, which I think most of you are, it's one way in and one way out. So you're coming into the school, but as you're coming into the school, you're coming into the doctor's surgery, you're coming into Lidl's, you're coming into Tesco's. So it's massive traffic coming in. We have had a huge impact. So from November 2023, we started off with a car count of about up on almost 400 cars coming on site. We are down now to about 240, 220 every Wednesday. We go out every Wednesday. It's myself, a group of kids, which they are, to me, are the main ones. They arrive in a school at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're up with our placards, our high vises. The parents see it and they go, oh Jesus, it's them again. But it's working. Even if they what we would be hoping, and from the council, and I know I've just spotted Dylan after coming in, and I've worked with Dylan. We're after rolling this out to other schools. Dylan is taking it on board. So De La Salle is taking it on. St. Augustine's down in Dungarvan. This works, but we need the support of the people. We need the parents to get the kids and say, get out of the car, walk. That's, yeah. It's, yeah.
I went to De La Salle. And it's good to see that they've taken on board, and it's great to have people like yourself that are very active in the community. And the really important thing here is to count, so that you can go with the numbers to the City Council, to the Department of Education, and say, look, this is working. We're after getting a, whatever, 45% reduction in cars coming onto the school campus. And
actually around the whole area of the school, not only onto the school, but you can see it. But what we do need is set down areas for them to be, because not everyone can walk to school, and it's understandable. And this morning, I didn't bring anyone out. It was too wet. I would not have a parent getting onto me. But I did stand out myself and done a car count, and I had 401 cars on site this morning. I get it, but the traffic didn't stop from 8 a.m. until 9:15. It just kept coming. There was no stopping. And that would have been a normal, everyday occurrence. But even though we only go out of a Wednesday, the reduction is there, and the benefits are huge. We see the kids and the students last week, and again Lola has come out with me. We've had lots of people come out, but they're chatting, they're laughing, they're talking, and the teachers will tell you the benefit when they go into class. It's unbelievable. So it's a win-win in every aspect, from health and safety, just to health, mindset, everything.
changing those kids' behaviours from when they're dropping their kids off. It's improving air quality. It's reducing accidents. It's great work.
I just kind of feel it's a win-win.
Yeah. Okay. Something that's missing, something that's good.
Yeah, I'll go with something that's good first. I think, and I think I've said it to Conor, I think hats off here, not only on behalf of the Conundrum team, but the people at Tramore. I think they've engaged with the process, and I think it's a unique process, and we might talk about that later. But for I suppose personally, the most important action here, and while there are 9, I'm sure there could have been a lot more, and but that distillation process has been great to whittle it down. And they're sufficiently specific, but at the same time broad enough to leave some leverage. That's the implementation. But for me, I think it's the first one to enhance safety, and not just by the implementation of a lower speed limit. I think on a holistic basis, safety is key, and if somebody feels safe, it opens up a huge amount of possibilities, and you know, it's key, and it doesn't mean that you're safe sitting in your car in a traffic jam, or you're safe sitting in your car going at 100 kilometres an hour or whatever. If we can, and it's probably a much bigger conversation and a much bigger piece, but if we can make people safe in their environment, I think that we're on to a winner. So it's about how that happens, whether it's getting them out of the car and making the kids feel safe walking to school, or making people, obviously starts at the residents and will filter through to the people who visit here, that Tramore is a safe place. So I think it's a holistic piece. I think there's quite a bit of work done on that already, and I think you can almost feel that it's a place that people want to live, which is great. So I think that would for me I suppose be the first one. As for the downside, now I don't think there are any downsides to this, but I would think, and maybe it's one word that's rightly maybe not very prominent in the report, and that's responsibility. And I think even to get that, to buy into that piece of safety, to get that safely, there's a responsibility for all the actors, the stakeholders, and the residents. So I think we all, we're all in this together. Go back to the example of the school. There's a responsibility there for the kids, for the staff, for the parents, for us as a local authority to provide the infrastructure. But that's key, and we all need to buy into that. We have to realise that we have that responsibility. At the same time, it's an opportunity.
Yep, and it's good to hear that. And what you were saying there about people feeling safe, I went to Centre Parks with my sister and her kids over Christmas. I stayed there for one day. I don't have kids, and but no kids, one day is enough in Centre Parks. But one of the things that you see in Centre Parks is cars go in one day when they're dropping people off, and that's it, they're gone. Kids can run around, they can bring their dogs, their scooters, bikes, and all the rest. And it's this very kind of, you can see what life is like without cars. We're not saying for a second that tomorrow we need to get rid of all the cars that are here, but it kind of shows what's possible when that happens. I suppose the next question, and it was one of the reasons, not only because I'm from Waterford, and Vinny was very nice to me and said we should do Tramore, but one of the reasons that we thought Tramore was very interesting was because of the seasonal nature of sorry, Conor, now all the dubs in the Dublin invasion that happens during the summer. I remember it well, and how that changes the town and how it changes the town for the locals. They're just trying to get around, but obviously it's a huge economic benefit for the town as well. And maybe I'll start back with you, Vinny, as well. In that seasonal nature of what happens here in Tramore, I suppose what you see as perhaps some of the solutions that could or quick fixes that could happen.
So I love the way in some towns they actually take that seasonal kind of approach to how they deal with traffic. So Kinsale, one-way systems. Dingle has a one-way system which operates very successfully. Even from a future development perspective, Dingle has bus stops that reflect the local identity. They're currachs on top of lovely stone-built pillars. There's those type of approaches that we should be looking at here. We shouldn't be looking at transport. I'm going to keep saying this to you, Brian, so don't ask me about transport questions. We shouldn't be looking at this. This was a very useful opportunity to push an agenda of accessing opportunity, and accessing where you want to go to is an issue. But there's so much more that needs to be done in Tramore, and that includes the marine opportunity that some people here in this audience are trying to push from an amenity perspective. Joining the three towns that are Tramore, as in Beach, Town Centre and the area around the Ring Road, and that requires us to not look in that siloed way. So you didn't, and I thank you for that, because this opens up a whole opportunity. But one-way systems, I think we need to be bold. I think we need to be looking at what should Tramore look like over the next 20, 30 years, and be bold and look for the resources over the next number of years. And this starts that process. And I think I would imagine Tramore Development Trust hasn't met in relation to this, but I think they'd be really happy with this document. But being bold, I think, would be really important.
Maybe just to follow on to that, what's the barrier to being bold and achieving this?
I don't think there is. Sometimes you might just look for forgiveness and keep pushing agendas. I just one thing, and the two elected members here, imagine if Lola and Blaze had Town Matters at their disposal every day, where they could see what local sentiment was in relation to transport, or it would be a fabulous resource. So this is something that I think that I hope he win the competition, but it's a fabulous concept, and you could do damage and be bold if your elected members had that ammunition of what the locals feel about their town or village or rural area, and how it could impact change within local government and other agencies as well.
I think one of the sorry, I'll ask you the question as well, but I think one of the important things about something like this is when you're putting out, say, a summer street that you want to do, that you say this is a trial. If it doesn't work, we'll take it out. If there's a lot of kickback, we will take it out. We'll go out and count, and we will see what the differences are. But I think the process, like Conundrum, has people from the start, as opposed to next week we're closing down this road. What do you think? You get people's backs up straight away because they've not been in the room all the way through the conversation. Not sure, Francis, do you want to add anything as a local that you think that could be done? No. Okay. Paul, I'll pick on you.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I suppose from a local authority point of view, and my remit is what's called the Metropolitan Municipal District, which effectively is centred on the city, but what comes as far as Tramore and Dunmore East. The relationship between Tramore and the city is something that needs to be considered and appreciated, I think, as well. It's they have to coexist, and there's positives and negatives to that. I think you have to focus on the positives. There are a couple of things struck me, and I suppose it's been a nut. I suppose the local authority has been not quite trying to crack, but I suppose allowed develop, and that is the relationship between the city and Tramore. Tramore it is rightly a location in itself, a destination in itself, and a place that people want to live in itself. It does have an effect on the city, for example, as a place that people may prefer to live in, and that brings its own challenges and opportunities at the same time. And that brings, obviously, there are a huge amount of people travelling to the city every day and back again in the evening. There are opportunities there, to rationalise public transport, and not only to stop at the gate of Tramore, but to bring that right up through the town and into the town. So again, there's opportunities there. I think for example, the summer streets is something that has been trialled quite successfully in the city on a smaller basis, like playful streets and something like that. If you bring it forward to for example, the prom in Tramore, now you have a real opportunity, not only for people who would come and visit, but for the people who live here. And I'll always go back to the point, you have to cater for the people who are going to live here 12 months of the year, not only 1 or 2 months of the year. But there's opportunities there to showcase what you have and what you can do. Some of this is never going to go away. The hill up past the race course is going to be as steep as it is now in 50 years' time. But you can plan for beyond that. One thing that struck me in the maps, and they're taken from the CSO, the small area data. There are correlations between affluent areas, for example, and car ownership, and relatively disadvantaged areas are almost the destination areas. So there's a lot of information there that I think needs to be focused in on by the local authority and by the people in Tramore. Again, to identify why is that, and what can we do to change that. And again, it goes back to the safety and the responsibility, but ultimately there are opportunities there in that. So I think, there's a huge amount of information in the report, and to whittle that down to the 9 actions is great. But again, go back in and look at some of the information that has informed those actions, and I think there's opportunities there. So,
again, thank you very much for the nice words about the document, and definitely, I remember as a kid with my brother how we would get to Tramore was by hitching a lift, just the roundabout on the way out to Tramore. That's how we used to do it. But yeah, that connection. But and not to labour the transport point, there's also the housing point as well, and how housing is interconnected with mobility, and how that can open up an area like Tramore. I think is very important. I'm not sure how we're doing for time. I might open it up to. Okay, I think I might open it up to if there are any questions.
Yeah, the compliments again the process and have been involved in a number of the workshops. It was very comprehensive, quite a significant range of stakeholders attended that are all acknowledged there. So I suppose my question is the fact that if you look at the document, there's lots of nuggets there. So it calls out in very specific language things like there's a difference between the seafront, the town centre, and the ring road. So we don't need to try and find out that again. We know that it points out the difficulty in getting people from the seafront to get up to the town centre. There's innovation. There's an idea that we have a travelator from that connects with the mobile hub up to the public realm, and seems like an immediate idea. Quick win. There's no traffic there, etc., etc. Somebody used the example that Santander Spain has loads of travelators, and I've actually looked. It has more rain than Tramore, so it's not that we have more rain, so it will work. My question is that we have all this stuff. Loads of people have been involved. It's research. It's benchmarked. Planning tool is in the language that planning people will understand. How do we fast track it? That we doesn't. Whoever implemented, responsibility was the word that you used. It's probably implementation. It's probably more accurate. How do we implement this, and how do you fast track it? That it doesn't go at ground zero in the council if the council is largely responsible for it. How does it become a more immediate and implemented?
I think I might just to start off with that. I think one of the things, and this is not just because I'm from Waterford, I think in the city has been very innovative in the types of interventions that it has done. I remember talking about whatever they were doing in Dublin, pedestrianising some street, and I was like, Waterford has had that for decades. You know, we've done all of this kind of hard work. It's not saying that Waterford doesn't have issues around transport, but those innovations are there. So if that innovation can spread out to Tramore and do those types of ideas that you've looked into. But I suppose it's the ownership of that document, and one of the recommendations is that a grouping comes together under what I'm not sure who would be the creator of that grouping, but I think that's one of the things that you can do. And then equally go to your locally elected representatives and say, look, this is what these independent academics came out and said. This is what needs to be done. How do we bring that forward? I'm sorry, but we're not NTA and we don't have millions in our pockets that we can just give you, but. One of the things that if we get to the next phase of it is we'll be monitoring progress in the towns, and Tramore being one of our starter towns, we will be adding in sensors to see if this modal change is happening as the developments come from Waterford City and County Council. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to.
It's interesting in relation to the Enniscorthy example, where a similar exercise was done, and one of the recommendations was for a mobility hub, and so Wexford Council put forward a bid to the NTA, and I'm led to believe that was resourced or is being considered.
Funding application in for European funding.
Yeah, so I suppose in answering Peter's question, there's opportunity in relation to building cases for funding mechanisms, and even with URDF, which could be, I'm led to believe, 3 years down the line for Tramore, you have that window to actually develop proposals that are within this, or actually do further pieces to actually make sure you have a very good integrated application going forward for URDF that doesn't look at just 1 or 2 or 3 things. It actually addresses a whole level of opportunity for the town.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and thanks for your engagement throughout the process as well. But on that piece of the group coming together, I'd really encourage that you invite the likes of Lola and Blaze, have at least one local councillor in that, so you have that political side to it. And also, while we are very much, we've listened to everybody and we're giving the plan back to it, we're happy to engage with you to help look at those funding options and indeed give feedback or help where we can on particular applications or that sort of thing. So absolutely not just packing up.
The data from the town's matter portal is still there as well. That can be used as well to create business cases.
Are we doing for the video?
Okay, just number one, speed limit reduction. That can be done without any. That can be done in the next time that we do sit down with the An Garda Síochána and the council. That can be done with no money. And I can tell you now, judging on the reaction to the ring road, it won't go down well, because the people who are sitting here are invested in this, but the people we really want to target probably aren't sitting here, because Blaise and I and all the other local representatives at the moment are getting it in the neck in relation to the ring road, and people are not happy that they're slowing down at all. They're saying it's way too narrow, and you can see it on social media anyway. But we can't be asking you, and this is a fantastic document, we can't be asking you to do this if we're not willing to take it on board.
The word could is used in many places in the action section. I'm wondering, did you mean can and should rather than could?
I think the can and should would come from the local community and picking out the options that are there to.
Yeah, to my mind, if you would read that at the political level, just saying you could, rather than you should, and you have to potentially.
Yeah, and I mean, I absolutely agree. There's power in language, and it's important to use very affirmative language. I guess, as Brian was sort of hinting on there, this strategy, because from our positioning, we're not mandated, we don't have authority to sort of dictate who needs to do anything or what should happen. We're after compiling this information because it's what people who participate in the research told us, and we certainly hope, and we ourselves, Conor and I, when we were drafting out some of these, definitely played around with the should and can and everything, and actually it's a case of thinking about, well, actually, in wording it like this, we want this to be a tool that's accessible. Ultimately, it goes back to what you were hinting at, getting at about responsibility. And it's the need for, one of the actions there, it's the interagency team. And, that's something that, for example, it works really well in Enniscorthy. And it goes to what Lola was saying as well, some of the points about feedback, where it brings together all of the different actors. So not just people who show up because they want to talk about mobility, but this is like an invitation to anybody in the town, whatever sort of group. So the code it's more of an invitation to participate. But in Enniscorthy, what happens is by participating in those, Tramore is very similar in that there's a lot of work happening with different groups. Whether it's the local authority, whether it's Tramore Development Trust, whether it's the Safe to Schools programme, whatever it is, there's a lot of things happening here for different reasons. So it's a case of actually bringing those together to see where the synergies are. That's why the language is at times vague. We're specific, but also trying to be vague, because we don't want it to seem too rigid that we think that this one person should do it and they're the only person that can do it. Actually, what we're trying to say is this is something that's an invitation to anybody to participate in, and we very much welcome you to come in and share responsibility, to start participate, that collaboration together, because that's where you'll find the broader community support coming in then, because it's not coming from someone that they distrust, it's coming from someone that they trust. From a different perspective. It could be safety, it could be children, it could be anything. I'll give you this thing.
On that point, actually, when you show that you're serious about doing something, you will get people behind you. We have, a few of us have loads of information about that, in the sense that we started one unit thing and it took 3 or 4 years to get interest going. We started another set up and everybody was enthusiastic about it and joined it. That's not what I wanted to say. There's something that you could do quite quickly and wouldn't cost an awful lot of money, but it would show cause to the community that you're serious about what you're doing, and that is to close the rat run that has become, that is the lower prom. Before COVID, we did a vox pop down there and discovered that only one woman actually wanted her car to be able to drive in to get her coffee in all the tables up and down, and it was the middle of summer, okay? Then COVID came and we learned, when it was all closed down, what a wonderful space it was when we were let out. Do you remember that? We were closed in first, and then my age group, we were let out and we were let down there. Oh my God, it was absolutely heaven. And I was reminded of it again last year when Ray ran the Vitamin C Festival, and it was closed again. The rat run, as I call it, the rat run was closed again. and the children were playing a little setup of, soccer, and all kinds of tents and things arrived, and there was a great feeling of camaraderie about it. That wouldn't cost anything. The loss to the council would be 30 car spaces, paid car spaces, which, to tell you the truth, are only waiting to have an accident. That's my contribution for just now.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's fantastic. I think COVID taught us a lot, and it's a pity that didn't stay there. And to go outside of Tramore for a second, I know in Skibbereen that they took a lot of space out of away from cars and parking. That has completely changed that town. So something like that would be fantastic.
That could be done before summer.
And the speed limits.
And drawings on the road for children to learn. They're bright to the little traffic lights and cycleways and whatever. To have it as a community area instead of a car park.
Agree?
Sorry, I should have been on the stage.
Go ahead.
So just a quick question. The report looks excellent, I have to say, brief reading. How does it take forward? There's going to need to be a degree of coordination to move this forward. Is this something that the Development Trust will coordinate between, because you're looking not just local authority, you're looking at the bus companies, it's across the board, the guards, schools, the whole thing. So it's going to need a certain degree, a larger degree of coordination to try and get some of this implemented and trying to push along further issues as well.
I'm going to go to you, Vinny, but I do that there is a model that we worked with in Enniscorthy, and perhaps maybe we could set up the connection between Enniscorthy and those that are interested here to look at the model that they have in that town that could be replicated here in Tramore.
Yeah, and I think that this document, all it does is actually provides a platform for the likes of that to happen. But it's not just to happen from the point of view of trying to chase funding, because that's generally the case, that you'd set up a town team that might look at economic development, that might look at retail, that might look at architecture, but it's bigger than that. The reason I suppose Tramore Development Trust would have started that is to look at an overall plan for the town over the next 20, 25, 30 years. So, but I think this sets the platform for something like that to happen. So, and I think it gives an opportunity for the Tramore community as well to push Waterford Council. I work with Waterford Council, but we need to be pushed to actually do the type of stuff that's coming in within this document. So.
And to maybe to scale it by what's urgent, what can be done quickly, and what's working, what Francis is doing, that can be.
I just answer to Lola. You were saying with the outer ring road, which at the moment it is loads of road work. We all see that, and I suppose I look at that as potential. That when we get to the other side, this is not for me or you or probably most of us in the room, but it's for kids and grandkids that can actually go out on a bike. I've raised 3 kids. I would have never left them cycle that ring road. I would love that opportunity to say, get on your bike and go to school. And I think with that, if the kids can go on their bikes and go to school, it's going to reduce the traffic, and if they get out muck. By reducing the traffic, the people that do actually need to use it will be able to use it. That we won't have this big volume of traffic. That people out more need to be patient. I am really holding out. I've got in so many arguments, even with my family, over the ring road and the roadworks, and I'm passionate that this will work. Yes, it's slowing the traffic. It's slowing it going into the estates. There's a reason why. It's traffic calming. So, I hope like that people will eventually see it. So just, yeah.
I think that's a big boulabus for that. I think that's a very passionate point to perhaps to finish up on. And I'd like to thank the panel and everybody else. Dina's going to close off, but thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so thank you again, everybody, for coming, and thanks for all of the questions and answers. We're not kicking you out just yet, so if you want to have a refill of tea, coffee, right now, we can continue the chats. as Conor hinted at, we're not just, this is the end of this process leading up to the creation of the strategy for Tramore, but we are still around. You have our contacts. Really what we're hoping for, and it goes back to the question about the what next step, we would love for what happened in Enniscorthy to happen here, whereby in Enniscorthy we suggested 9 actions similar to here, and within, still going on, but within a couple of months, all 9 were being actioned or being explored for potential, okay? So different stages, because intentionally with the actions, some of them are bigger, more costly things, feasibility studies are expensive, so that's one of them about what that might lead. But other ones are things that actually you don't need to wait, and you shouldn't wait for the local authority to do, because it goes to that responsibility. It's not just the local authority's town. And it's what Paul was hinting at there about, there's a need for everyone to be involved in this. So the actions we suggested, again, they're vague. You can take what you like, what you don't like. You can change them, you can make it suit the local context more. But we'd like this to be an invitation for everyone to feel like they're going to try drive change at a local level more. And that can, some of the actions are there sort of in that more accessible, immediate level for that. So this is by no means us saying, right, this is now over to local authority. It's over to everybody. We had all diverse stakeholder participants. It's over to everybody to really try drive that change. So thank you again for everyone for participation in this, for the 90 or so participants we had in the work here in Tramore. For those of you, Una from Southern Regional Assembly, who help on the more, the broader regional scale or the county level scale or the national scale, couldn't have done it without you. We hope that this will be of use. We are still around, so do contact us. We would hope to be able to support within remit. We don't have endless resources, but to be able to help support and encourage some of those actions to be taken up and to loop you in with relevant people. We're very happy for that, so do follow up. And otherwise, thanks so much. Bring some cakes so I don't end up eating it all on the train home to Kildare. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.